bienvenidos al club. Bienvenidos a una nueva entrega especial de NBAdictos. Ya sabéis que de vez en cuando traemos invitados del otro lado del charco con los que hacemos entrevistas en inglés. Hoy es una de ellas. Además, hoy tenemos poquito tiempo, así que vamos a ir directos. La entrevista en inglés, luego la tendréis traducida y doblada al castellano. Vamos con la autora de Dream, el libro sobre la vida de Hakeem Olajuwon, Mirin Fader. Aquí comienza el capítulo 609 de NBAdictos. And we have Mirin with us. First of all, Mirin, pleased to meet you and welcome to NBAdictos. I said it right, Mirin Fader?
Yeah, so great to meet you. Thanks for having me.
I have a strange name, so I always
You
ask
get it.
if I say it right.
It's much appreciated, trust me.
For the people that doesn't know you, you working in The Ringer, previously in Bleacher Report. A couple of years ago, you published a book about Giannis Antetokounmpo. And now you have this Dream, the biography about Hakeem Olajuwon. How is the combination of being in the work day by day on stories about the NBA and preparing some books that need so much work, and also, in your case, across the ocean?
Right. Yeah, I wish there was more than 24 hours in a day. I'll say that. I feel like every day I'm like, okay, I should be doing this. No, I should be doing this with the Ringer or the book. And I think one informs the other, doing stuff for the Ringer, following the NBA, also doing random football stuff or other stories. It keeps me inspired. It keeps me fresh. And it sort of gives me the ideas. I mean, both books came out of my work from original stories. The Giannis book came out of a story I did for Bleacher Report. And the Dream book came out of all of that work on Giannis. So, I think writing books is so exciting because in the world we live in, the articles are cut short, right? Like it's very hard for people to read, more than 3,000, 4,000 words. But in a book, it's like I have this great opportunity to really get into somebody's life and somebody's journey in the level of detail that I can't in my work at the Ringer. So I actually think both are really exciting challenges on their own.
I really think that the things that we tell are important, but it's also important how do we tell it. You have a way of writing. You do great profiles, and I don't know if these books are like an extension, like taking the time to do what you would like to do many times, but you don't have the time for it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think that's right. I think that it's for me, it feels like freedom to do a book. There's so many times that I turn in a story for the Ringer and things get cut, and it's so hard for me. I want to include everything, and so for me, the book is like really a chance to go deeper. I mean, the Giannis book, we don't even get to the NBA until like I don't know, like 150, 200 pages in, right? Like that's a lot of material before we even get to professional basketball. So it's just, I don't know, in my stories with the NBA and normal, they are deeper, they are longer, but in this era of social media and Twitter or whatever, the clickbait stuff, it's very hard to kind of have as much in-depth as you would like. So this is definitely, I hope I can keep writing books. It's definitely my passion.
In order to keep writing books, people have to buy it. So please buy Dream and please buy Giannis.
Louder, please tell them.
You also have a different point of view. I just tell you before we start recording that I will interview you again with more time in the future. Yeah. But you grew up playing basketball with boys. Do you have a different point of view of what basketball is, of what sport is? I assume also what journalist is. And maybe you put your eye in some things that maybe another person don't do.
I think so. I've thought about this a lot over the years, and I think, there's so few women in sports in general. The most of the women you see are on TV, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just there's so few of us, actual journalists doing written work. Um, there's been difficult times, but I think, like kind of what you were saying, I really have learned to think of it in terms of giving me a different eye, a different perspective. Um, I don't think a woman's perspective is better. It's just different. There are things that I will pick up on that maybe some male writers won't. I think I'm more in tune with community and the spirit of, this idea that it takes a village. And I think a lot of my work really centers on not just interviewing the player, but their mom, their dad,
Yeah.
their coaches, their mentors. And so I think women tend to be more community oriented and community focused. And so maybe my eye catches that. I also think when I show up at the doorstep of the parents of somebody I'm profiling, they are so surprised. I'm like, they've never seen a woman sports writer before, so it's kind of like this thing you think of as like a disadvantage almost becomes an advantage because you're just something new and different. And so I find that it kind of helps in some ways.
Mhm. I think that all the different points of view make the things richer, and I always say that one of the journalists I learn most is Doris Björk, and I think she is
Yeah.
the greatest, and I really happy to see her commenting all the games she's doing. I think that she's great.
So good. And you know what? She really shows also that, like, you have to do good work as a woman. Like, you can't mess up. The margin for error is so small. And I feel that way in my work as well. Like, we can't just write books. We have to write books that people, care about and are excited about. And, Doris is somebody that I admire too. So I'm really glad we're on the same page there.
In a world that we see a lot of men that are mediocre, the excellence is what are is demanded for you, the woman.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you said it. Yes, it's I think earlier in my career, I felt that pressure more, and I felt this idea that I also had to prove that I knew basketball. Before
Mhm.
women's basketball had this great moment and everybody's into the WNBA, a lot of times I was actually forced to cover women because a lot of the publications didn't think I could cover men, and so it was seen as like a downgrade of an assignment back then, and so it's been so fascinating for me to see the way that that's changed. So I hope our views are continuing to shift on this topic.
Mhm. Let's talk about the book because as you can see, I'm a huge fan of you, and you interest me a lot as a journalist, as a person. But we are here to talk about Dream, this book about Hakeem Olajuwon. Um, for a start, first you did the book of Giannis Antetokounmpo. And we know he's Greek, but he has that Nigerian roots. Um,
Mhm.
is there any connection with the Nigerian roots of Giannis Antetokounmpo when you do all the work for that book? That is there any connection that you say, hey, there is that legend,
Yeah.
Nigerian legend that maybe is not as I don't know how to say that, valued as he
Yeah.
deserves?
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking exactly what you just said. They do come from the same tribe of Nigerian culture, and they grew up with similar values of like discipline and, being respectful and hardworking. And I think the first book really taught me. I mean, I will say this, like, even before Giannis, I was always interested in international stories. I went to Lithuania for a story. I went to Australia. I did a story on basketball in India. There's just so much more basketball stories outside of the US. So that always like caught my eye. When I did the Honest book, I felt like it was almost 2 books in one. Like, it was a story not just about him and his life, but also about the way that the NBA is changing and has grown so much more international. And so for the second book, I thought, how can I tell a story of how we got to this point? Like, who paved the way for Giannis, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic? Like, who's the, like, international pioneer that doesn't, as you say, isn't as valued, doesn't deserve, doesn't have the credit that others are given. And so I was thinking, like, I think Dream would be the perfect topic, and he's so deserving of it, and doesn't quite get that credit.
Mm-hmm. Hakeem Olajuwon, for me, I don't know if top three, because for me, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell are the top two centers of all time. And when I have to say the top three, depending the day, I say one or another, but Olajuwon is always in that conversation. But I feel that the young people doesn't value Olajuwon the way he deserves it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I couldn't agree more. First of all, like, we don't even talk about defense enough in our culture. Like, the fact that he's top 10 in steals to this day as somebody that tall is insane. And also, like, I interviewed Shaq for this book, and Shaq was like, I put Hakeem above me every single time in my top 5. And I just think that speaks volumes. I think maybe it's Hakeem is so quiet, he's so private that maybe because he's not on TNT with Charles Barkley and Shaq and them, like Kenny Smith, we don't see him, so we don't think of
Yeah.
him. But you're right, like he deserves to be talked about in that group. I mean, when I think of Kareem, it's interesting. Hakeem is like one of the few players that is timeless in the way that he's able to play, right? So he dominated Kareem and he dominated Shaq. I
Yeah.
don't know another player that like has that type of adaptability to the different eras.
Mm-hmm. And also you said that Shaq says that he puts Karim ahead of him. Hakim also did that in the finals of '95.
Right. He has personal experience with this.
Yeah. I'm glad you talk about defense, because nowadays I have huge debates about if some players are good defenders or not, and
Right.
and I think that Victor Wembanyama, he has all the potential of being maybe the greatest defender of all time, but I think that now he doesn't defend well. He's so big, he blocks shots, but the defending is not making blocks or something. And you say Olajuwon, he was such a great defender, because being a center, he is a top 10 in steals, because he knew how to read the play, how to read the game. So
Mhm.
he cuts passes, and he was always 1 or 2 steps ahead.
Yeah. It's so I love the way you said that because it reminds me how people really don't think of defense as a skill, as an intellectual IQ thing, but it really is. Like the way you were saying about like the anticipating and the timing of the steals and the shot block shots, like imagine Wemby doing that. Like I really think that is the next level he could reach. I fully agree with that. I think it's also a passion thing, right? Like
Yeah.
Hakeem starts playing basketball at age 17. So it's not like he was born with this like natural gene to play basketball and played all his childhood. He gets better because he has a relentlessness inside of him. So I would just like to see more players in today's era have that sort of like, if you want to score on me, you got to go through me, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what Hakeem had.
Mhm. You said he started playing basketball at 17, relatively late, because previously he played soccer and handball, and I think that all that helped him with that footwork. For me, the best footwork. We had an announcer here in Spain, Andres Monte, in the '90s. He used to put a lot of nicknames, and he called Olajuwon the claquette dancer of the Cotton Club, of how he.
Yeah.
And I think that with a lot of players in the past, when we talk nowadays, and we always say, but it was in his time, When we interviewed George Muresan, he told us that in the 80s, if the game was so to the 3 point line as is nowadays, he said we would train that, we would shot better. I think that Hakeem Olajuwon nowadays, he would be still top three centers in the NBA.
I agree. I think his game is like so perfect for this era. I mean, that's why I also think like he was positionless basketball before we even started using that term, you
Yeah.
know? Like his ability to float between positions and, the fact that he was just so nimble and could just be so light on his feet and be so quick. Like I totally think he would dominate in this era. I mean, I can't really see another player today do what he does. I see glimmers of him in Giannis, of course, like, and as we
Mhm.
talked about, that really motivated the choice in this book. I see glimmers in Joel Embiid, but nobody has put it together like he did. And I think if he played in today's era, oh my God, it would just be unreal.
And he also is a referent. I listened to you in another podcast yesterday talking about how Kobe went to Olajuwon to learn from him. A lot of players do that, and he's so humble. He's not talking about that or doing interviews saying I teach him everything he knows or something. But I think this it's very important that so many players, so different players, not only centers, go to Karim to Hakim to learn about him.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point, I just love that he does it because he wants to help other people get better and doesn't want credit for it, right? Like how many guys do we know who have retired who like do one community event and they got to have a whole press release about it and here's I'll be at this mall, come see me, la la la. Hakeem is literally helping LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Yao Ming, Giannis Antetokounmpo. The list goes on and he
Mm.
never talks about it. The only reason we know about it is because those players sang his praises. It goes back to his religion, his devotion to Islam, which really encourages like giving without trying to receive publicity or attention, and how, you do good deeds because they're good deeds, not because you want to be seen as popular or good or morally sound. But like, it's also so cool to think that somebody like Kobe, who shouldn't have anything in common with a big man, is like,
Mm.
no, I believe your game can help me as a three. Like that really is like, and that just says it all right there, right? Like positionless. When we talk about
Yeah.
positionless, all these players were like, whatever Hakeem has, I need to incorporate in my game. And a
Mhm.
lot of legends won't do that. A lot of legends won't give up their secrets. I think it's so cool that he's like become this, elder statesman mentor figure to them all.
Yeah, we are now in an era that is all about selfishness and
Right.
egos. Uh,
Right.
I don't see a lot of stars of nowadays stars. Maybe Curry, but if we get Steph Curry apart, I don't see many stars doing that the way Hakim does.
Yeah, I mean, even I love Giannis, but even he says, "I won't work out with other players."
Yeah.
You know? So, it's like there's just this real secrecy going on here, and I just think, wow, like, we're how many lessons these people can give? Like, maybe that will change when they retire. I don't know what LeBron's gonna do. Maybe he will become that person for so many, even though, he has so many other things he's involved in outside of the game, but to me, it goes back to Hakeem's mentor, Moses
Mm.
Malone, right?
Yeah.
He was the one that mentored him and taught him the value of giving back. So it's
Mm.
no surprise to me, knowing how close those two were, that Hakeem would then pass that legacy on to this generation.
Mhm. We could talk for hours about Hacking Olajuwon.
You got to go
You
part
have yeah, you have to buy Dream, the book of Mirin Fader about the life of Hacking Olajuwon, his childhood in Nigeria, his trip to the US, the Fi Islam Yama in Houston, his career in the Houston Rockets, also that year in the Raptors, and why he didn't end his career in the Rockets. All of that is in your book, Mirin. It's been a pleasure having you here. I hope you've been comfortable, and I'm hoping to have you another time and with more time to speak with you.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for having me. We'll definitely do a part two. And this was so fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much.